Hi, my question is about how do you determine the best level of requirements and documentation needed to work in an agile environment with offshore teams? The challenge that we had working with one of our clients was we had brought in an offshore team to work with a product development organization. It was a commercial software company, and previously, their practice had been they had lighter requirements definition on the front end between business and IT. And when we brought in the offshore team, that wasn't effective. So we needed to find the right balance of, how do we, increase the user documentation, the level of requirements that could make the offshore team successful. So I'd just like to understand what is your experience and approach towards doing that.
So this is a good one actually, because it's a very timely thing, right? If you're a CIO right now, you're over the last few years, you're saying, okay, I need to get cheaper, I need to get faster, I need to get better. I'm not sure I know how to yet measure faster and better well, but cheaper I can always measure by my cost per hour for the mythical developer hour, so to speak. And so frankly everybody's using offshore, right? It's not that you can't do it that way. It's not that you can't make that work. It goes back to being more explicit about how you communicate between those locations, right? You need to make sure that if you're going to do this, let's say the daily stand-up meeting you're going to have, you need to either, let's use India since it's prevalent, somebody's going to change their hours even just a little bit. There's got to be a little bit of overlap so that the daily stand-up meeting is attended by teams on both sides. Number one, right? That's an absolute critical. Could you do it with 2 stand-ups? You could do that kind of thing, but at a minimum, you got to plan purposely for that kind of communication. And then on the requirement side of things, I've seen a bunch of different techniques used there, right? It could be that as part of your project chartering process, the sort of project visioning up front, the stuff that happens before you go into sprints and iterations, you take a couple of key people from your offshore team and have them spend a month onshore so they really get it. What is the business trying to do? And why is the business trying to do it? As a way to help backstop that, I've seen everything from that to using visual communication tools like iRise, for those of you that may have run into that one. There's a couple of others kicking around as well, because a picture really is worth 1,000 or 5,000 words in some cases, or 175-page requirements document, right? So you just have to look at what the communication is about, because almost always, my experience, whether it's waterfall or Agile, by the way, onshore, offshore issues are issues of communication. I keep harping on that, but if there's one thing you could do that would help, that's the thing.
Yeah, I think pretty much the same, when it comes to Agile and offshore, pretty much the same rules apply. Whether it's an offshore team or an in-house team, you need that communication. Good practice, even pre-Agile with offshore, is having ambassadors coming back and forth, right? But when I say that the same rules apply, one of the rules a lot of my clients have is during that upfront requirements envisioning, the developers and testers are part of that. So if you're using an offshore model, you need to find a way where at least some ambassadors from that team are involved in those discussions. So like you said, they understand the domain, they understand the why behind the stories, and when they pick it up during an iteration or a sprint, they recognize that story.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you're finding you have to ratchet up your requirements detail to send offshore, it's probably not being done right. And I would, ask you guys if I'm right. Your BA who's writing these requirements has to be in with the offshore team. They have to understand the domain, to your point, and have to be writing them. There shouldn't be any ratcheting up or improvement or change in the requirements for offshore. They should be doing it themselves. And to learn the domain, they should spend the co-location time for the startup period of the project, 2, 3, maybe 4 sprints.
Now, what you may be running up against is that in your waterfall execution, you already have these problems anyway, and you just don't know it yet.
I think as well, this This
We're
may
gonna,
be
I think we need to move to our next question at this point, just to keep things flowing.
Sure.
So,
Thank
right?
you. Good morning. My question is, can Agile and Waterfall happily coexist within one delivery organization, or is it really one or the other?
happily.
I think, you know, I mean, I would say it could happily coexist, right? I mean, there's going to be there's no magic, you know, wand where you just sort of wave it. So for the companies that that are doing this or starting to do it, there's always going to be a period of time where there's an overlap anyway. You can happily coexist, but you have to make sure that the management team understands, again, on both sides, both on the IT side and the business side, that these projects are getting done differently, and so you're going to see slightly different things. There will be different communication and different common language, if you will, used on both sides of that. And some companies may choose never to go completely agile. I had this conversation early on with the CIOs at Fidelity where I said, well, I'd like to, you know, I took the go big or go home approach. I went in and said, I want to convert the whole company in 24 months to be agile. Let's shoot the waterfall methodology in the side of the head and leave it, you know, leave it in the town common. That was a little bit faster than anybody else wanted to go. Okay, you know, that's fine. We can, you know, we can do that.
Yeah, I've seen them coexist. I think it brings us back to the earlier discussion on having that course grain plan and enough runway so that you can have those timely communications and status updates and even maybe scrum of scrum sort of mentality between the agile teams and the dependent waterfall teams.
Great. Next question on the left.
Are there any best practices around estimation techniques?
You guys may have different experience, but good estimation, what I have seen so far is that good estimation is good estimation. It doesn't change hugely just because you're, you know, executing the work in agile versus not. Good estimation techniques tend to be pretty applicable. Now there are tools that help you, you know, track the estimates and the, you know, the level of, and we haven't spent any time talking about tooling, which is at some point one of the other things that you have to think about. But I can't say that I've seen, oh, here's the secret sauce on estimating if you're in agile versus waterfall. Good estimation gets to some degree of granularity on the thing you have to code and, you know, unit test and integrate.
I would say that whatever your basis at the start of estimation is, keep the same denominator throughout the project. Even as the team matures over time, you don't want to change that denominator because then you lose your metrics. You don't know if you've gotten faster or better. You've got to keep it based on value, not how much time it's going to take us now to do this versus time it's going to take us in 6 months.
Yeah, I've seen a really worse practice when it comes to estimating. It kind of leads me to maybe a best practice. The worst practice was one of my former clients, they had this process just around estimating. And I was in one of the estimating sessions as they were rolling this out, and there was probably 40 people in the room helping to do this estimate. And at the end of 8 hours, they'd estimated essentially one task, and their estimate was 4 hours. And
So spend less time estimating than it would take you to do it.
So
Okay.
I think the secret sauce behind estimating is to recognize that putting more time into the estimate process doesn't mean you're going to have that much better of an estimate. With Agile, I think having the story concept allows you to do things like relative estimating, where, you know, an estimate across a large project of maybe 90 stories, you know, traditionally would take weeks perhaps to come up with a good estimate from a group. With an Agile team, you can do that in a day or two with relative estimating. And what really matters is not so much whether you're right or wrong, but you're consistent in your estimates because you've estimated the stories, small, medium, large, and as you see the team's velocity attacking those stories, then you can really predict when it'll be done.
Great, thanks. Just another question on the right here.
Hi, I've been practicing Agile for many years now, and one of the things I've always seen is a level of success based on acceptance throughout the organization. What are some of your keys for getting other groups outside of engineering or development, like sales and marketing and the exec team, getting on board with Agile? Because without that, doesn't work as well.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. It's a little bit like, it's the sort of snowball effect, right? If you pick a few places to start where you can get some success under your belt and have some vocal business partners, we have found, I won't say that it was purposeful necessarily, but we've found that a couple of the places where we were more successful early on and we got vocal business partners has been in some of what I'll call our client service or, back office operations, folks that tend to be a little bit more involved in technology projects anyway, and to get them to start to talk, and we'll get a couple of those people in the company who have said, I don't want to do projects any other way now that we've done it this way. If you can get that in a couple places, that's going to be a huge benefit.
We're going to continue our Q&A for those who want to continue, but I'm going to turn it over to Dave McKean for a minute to close us out, and then those who want to stick around, can certainly do so. We're going to be here. We'd definitely love to get to everyone's questions.
So I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to Dave, Eric, Gene, Jonathan. This was great. Really appreciate it. Thank you to our partners at Boston Business Journal and Mass High Tech. And most importantly, thank you to you for coming today, and your questions were unbelievable. So thank you very much.